Hey guys, today I want to talk about writer's block because I feel like this is a pretty common struggle in writing. There's a lot of times where the muse is just speaking to us, the words are flowing, things are going great, but oftentimes writers will hit a point where the muse seems to kind of flutter away, the well of creativity seems to dry up, and we're stuck with a blank page. Sometimes in the middle of the novel, sometimes at the very beginning, which is really unfortunate. But I have been told multiple times that there is no such thing as writer's block, and I agree with that. I think that there are ways to continue to dig a little deeper and to get a deeper well of creativity going. It takes a little bit of work, but I think it is possible. So I'd like to share some ways with you to see. Hopefully, this can help you on your writing journey. If you feel like it's a block, then these are some tools to either break down the barriers, break down the wall, or dig a little deeper and bring that wellspring up of creativity. So without further ado, let's jump in. The first thing you can do is called jumps. So you sit down with a notebook, you open it up, and you think of an image. Oftentimes, when we're writing a book, what we'll have is we'll have a picture in our head, but sometimes what happens is we don't have a picture linked to the last thing we wrote. So we just wrote there was a person, he was on a horse, he was running away from the bad guy, and then we don't really know what happens next. And because of that, we feel like we've hit writer's block. We feel like we got stuck. But we do have an image of him on a fishing boat. We don't really know why our character ended up on a fishing boat. We don't really know what got him there, but we can see that really clearly. Jumps are when you write what you can see really clearly and you don't force yourself to write the in between stuff. This might feel a little bit like cheating, but it's not, because what happens is your brain has a really clear image, it has a really clear idea. And when you write enough jumps, oftentimes what happens is your brain starts to understand and fill in those gaps. And then you have that full fledged creative story coming out. But jumps are a really good tool for getting it down on the page. So, what you might do, so taking a notebook, you write, he rode on his horse. You might write about the thundering of the hooves. It peters out because you have no idea what comes next. And then you write, what you do is you just draw a line and then go to the start again. You don't pick up your pen. You don't tell your brain, oh, we're done writing. You keep your pen on the page, go just to the next line, and then keep writing. Whatever his character's name is, woke up on the boat. The waves underneath him were choppy. You write for a little bit, it blanks out. You don't know what happens next, but you do see him clearly back on his horse, but this time in different armor. Okay, just keep going. All right. So jumps are when you only write what you can see clearly, and then you don't take the pen off the page. You just jump or draw a line to the next thing. What this is doing is this is keeping, you're investing some time into what your brain can see. And often those scenes are really, really clear. They give you really good material. And eventually your brain is going to start filling in those in between things. So often when I've started jumps, what I see happening is all of these scenes start to connect. So I'll have one scene where he's on a horse, for example, the scene where he's on the boat, the scene where he's in new armor, and then I'll realize there will be a scene which will explain what must have happened when he was on the horse to when he was on the boat. So the brain will start to fill that in. So jumps, amazing. Number two, write by hand instead of typing. This is our brains just shift a little bit. It's a different thing. This doesn't work for everyone. I know some people hate handwriting, but a lot of writers have said when they switch to journaling by hand, writing things in a notebook, the quality of their writing shifts. And also so does their brain shifts a little bit. So if you are stuck on your computer, you're typing and the words aren't coming anymore, sit down at your notebook with your notebook and your pen or your pencil and just start writing there. This slows down. We often write slower than we type. So it slows down our brain a little bit. It gives our brain a little bit more time to kind of create these words, to create these worlds. And what happens is oftentimes that alone will crush writer's block. Another tip, and this is kind of one that you want to start right away, a preventative tip, is to keep a writer's journal. This is where you can put anything. You can put random thoughts. When I was in my creative writing class in college, I would write how I felt in the mornings or how I felt at some point that day. I would just try to write every single day. So I might write about my experience of how the sunrise looked that day. I might write about a meal I really liked, a frustration I had with an idea in class, a frustration maybe with a A TV show that I was watching, maybe something I loved about the TV show I was watching, anything. I've known other writers who have just put receipts in there or grocery lists, anything that they feel like in a writer's journal. And so when they kind of run dry, they run out of ideas, what they do is they flip through their writer's journal, and their writer's journal will often spark some kind of creativity or imagination. And that's going to help them as well. Tip 4, write a stream of consciousness. If you feel like you're staring at a blank page or blank Word document and you just can't get the words out, often what it is there's this kind of fear of the blank. And artists struggle with this, writers struggle with this. If that is the case, just start writing anything that comes to mind. Wow, I ate macaroni earlier. It was kind of delicious, but now I'm kind of really full, blah, blah. I don't know, just kind of start going. And then what happens is your brain starts warming up a little bit, you get the cogs turning, and then you're able to jump back into your story oftentimes. Another thing is having a conversation or an interview with one of your characters. If you're writing a story and you feel like you've got some characters and they're pretty solid, but then you just feel like they're not talking to you anymore, the story's not going anywhere, one thing that can be really helpful is actually pretending that you're sitting down at an interview with your characters and asking them questions. Sometimes changing the format where you'd never put that in your book. You wouldn't be like, hello, me as the reader is saying hello to my character here. My character Mary's, how are you doing today? You kind of have this fake dialogue. Maybe you could put it into your book, depending on the style of your book. But oftentimes what this does is this just kind of gives us a different approach to the character. Maybe Mary says, I'm actually really mad because Bella in the story did this, and you start getting character motivations from a different perspective. So that's a really interesting idea to do as well, kind of looking at the character but from a different perspective. Okay, another idea, if you're struggling with writer's block and you can't write a scene, one thing you might be able to do is just write dialogue. Pretend you're just writing a play. This takes the pressure off if you're getting stuck in your head because you're only writing, you can't do descriptions and you're struggling with that and you just want to get the conversation out. Pretend it's a play. Just write like Mary, and then write what she says. Bella, write what she says. And you might just have a dialogue. Of course, you'll probably have to go back in there and kind of say, all right, now what is the scene? Describe it a little bit better. But for now, if you're stuck, you just need to get the dialogue out and you need to not worry about the description. Or on the flip side, on the same point, if you're the kind of person that loves description, but you struggle with the words that the characters are saying, maybe just take out dialogue completely. Say you're not allowed to write dialogue this scene, and you just write description and you just write body language. I have my students often have at least one assignment where they just write body language only and they can't write any dialogue. And I have to be able to glean from just how the characters are looking at each other, what they're doing, what the dynamics are. If you're struggling with dialogue, give yourself permission to just write body language, just write characters, actions, and that is going to give you a really clear idea of maybe what should go later on if you want to add in that dialogue. And then the whole scene will be really rich, so the dialogue will it will be in a well-developed scene. So if you are struggling with writer's block, think about just writing dialogue or just writing description, taking out one of those elements so that you can really enter deeper into the other elements. Okay, point 7, give your story permission to be terrible. I think sometimes what gives people writer's block, so to speak, is that they get stuck in their own heads because it's not perfect right away. And okay, I get it. We want our stories to be good. We want it to sound good. We don't want to write for an hour and then go back and read it and be appalled at what we wrote. But the simple truth is that we have to start somewhere. We have to develop, and we can't always say things perfectly. We're human, and that's okay. And I've seen some people, especially, if they're perfectionists, they write something and it's really, really good. And it's not quite what they saw in their head, so that they get frustrated and angry and they stop writing the story altogether. I never see another chapter of the book. And it kind of breaks my heart a little bit because what they had was so rich and they were so excited about it. And they had all these worlds and beautiful characters. they got stuck on one chapter that didn't sound right to them and they never wrote again. So don't let that be you. Let your story be terrible. Think of this as the draft which no one shall see, if that helps. And then this is just how the human brain works, is you write something down and then you edit it. Very, very rarely are you ever going to write something and it's going to be perfect take one. They say good things are not written, they're rewritten. And I think from what I have seen, it's very often true. Every so often you'll get hit with a stroke of genius probably, and write down something that needs almost no changing. But very often what happens is we start out with a draft that is less than ideal, and that's okay, and that's good. So I think that's one thing that can create writer's block in some people. If they let their pressure that they put on themselves take over the muse, that can kind of kill the story. So don't do it. Let it be what it has to be in the first draft. And then you can go from there. You can improve it from there. So number 7, give your story permission to be terrible. Number 8, create character soundtracks or story soundtracks. I'm a big fan of story soundtracks. There's often a mood or a vibe that I'm going for in a certain book, and I'll create a playlist off of that. And this is really, really helpful. This is really good for giving inspiration. And just listen to the sound, listen to the music whenever you need more inspiration. So creating a playlist can often kind of hit our brains from a new angle, and kind of wake that creativity up inside of us once again. So I definitely recommend that. Write what you see when you listen to the song. Let it kind of fuel you. I love soundtracks. I love that kind of thing for my stories. There are definitely certain movie soundtracks which I now associate with my characters. So when I hear it, I'll get nostalgic and I'll want to write that story again. Even though I think it's originally for a different video game or movie or whatever it is. But now I associate it with certain characters and sometimes certain moments in the story as well, which is really fun. Okay, number 9 is walk. Okay, so this is really interesting. Sometimes if you're writing a lot, your brain just might be a little tired. You're not, it's not necessarily writer's block, like you're not going to be able to write again. But if you're struggling to get words down on the page, your brain just might be a little bit tired. And so it might be just time to take a break and go for a walk. So if you are realizing that this just might be fatigue, get up, start walking. That walking is going to give blood flow. And there's a lot of studies about anytime you see a large pocket of geniuses in the world, there's a culture of walking around that in history. So, all the Greek philosophers, there was that kind of cluster of a lot of philosophers in one area, and they all there's a lot of walking in their town. I don't know, the musicians in Vienna, there's a lot of walking there as well. There's just been this kind of ongoing trend of in history, when we see pockets of great things happening, we see a lot of walking there. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. If you're running into a writer's block in your own life, go take a walk. Let the ideas kind of percolate. I can't tell you how many ideas that I've had come to me while walking or running. I love running. The kind of rhythm of it is delightful. So that has helped me a lot. If you are a runner, definitely go for a run as well. That would really help clear your brain, get the blood flowing, get the creativity going. There's all kinds of studies on how running helps writing as well. But it's enough to say that if writer's block is an issue, if you feel like you're getting a little stuck, it might just be time for a break, a little bit of movement to get things going again. And then number 10 is along the same lines of taking a break, is read. Sometimes we're trying to do too much output, and what we really need is to refuel our creative well springs, our creative sources, right? So one thing that's really good, if you feel like you're running a little dry on creativity, or you're running a little low on story content ideas or things like that, is just go read some books, and especially read some books in the genre that you are trying to write in. Maybe, although anything can help, anything can kind of spark imagination. A history book might spark a really cool idea for a fantasy novel, or a science book might spark a really cool idea for a dystopian novel. Whatever it might be, anything that you read that you kind of put into the pot to simmer is going to come out as a really beautiful story. It can come out as a really great story later if you just let it sit there for a little bit. So if you're experiencing what you feel is writer's block, then maybe your brain is just kind of telling you it's time to refuel the creativity, refuel that imagination, and go through and just read some books, fill up your brain with more great stuff. So anyways, those are some ways to help conquer writer's block. This is only some of many ways. So if there are other ideas and you're like, oh, this is how I always make sure that I stay creative, this is how I get over it, yeah, definitely let me know. Definitely put it in the comments below, or comments on the podcast, whatever it is. So yeah, let me know. I'd love to hear other people's ideas as well. And happy writing. Don't let writer's block stop you. Just let it be a jumping point to go a little bit deeper into your own creativity. So happy writing, friends.